Ashtavakra Samhitā by Swami Nitya-Swarupananda. Chapter 1. Instruction on Self-Realization. Janaka uvacha katham jnana mavam proti katham muktir bhavishyati vairagyam cha katham praptamedat bruhim mam prabho. How can knowledge be acquired? Janaka said. How can liberation be attained? How is renunciation possible? Tell me this, O Lord. Knowledge, realization of the identity of which the individual self and the Supreme Self or Brahman, which is existence, knowledge and bliss absolute. Liberation, freedom from ignorance, all bondage and limitations, arising concomitant with knowledge, that is, the complete destruction of all misery and the attainment of supreme bliss. Renunciation, unattachment to the pleasure and pain derived from worldly objects and even to the joyful life in heaven, which is also impermanent. This forms the most important of the 4 qualifications required for an aspirant of the attainment of self-knowledge. The other 3 qualifications being discrimination between the real and the unreal, acquisition of the 6 cardinal moral virtues, intense longing for liberation. The 6 cardinal moral virtues are Sam, restraining the outgoing propensities of the mind, Dam, restraining the external sense organs through which the mind attaches itself to sense objects, Uparati, withdrawing the self, Titiksha, forbearance, Samadhan, self-settledness, Shraddha, faith, the faith that is the grasp upon the ultimate, faith in the power of one's own self. It will be noted that renunciation is defined as unattached. Both these terms must be understood in depth. Renunciation has nothing at all to do with the giving up of possessions, as usually understood. Even one with no possessions has not renounced them if, mentally, he still identifies himself with them and therefore either desires them or rejects them. Unattachment is not indifference, nor is it the suppression of natural feelings of pleasure and pain. Attachment springs from the concept of duality, the idea that there are more entities than one. These entities are, on the one hand, the individual self, including the mind and the senses, and on the other, the world. Within the individual self there is consciousness. The individual is consciousness identified with its own body, mind, and senses. He regards the other individuals and all objects as separate and different from himself. As long as this identification persists, the individual's relationship with the world will be based upon the sense of indifference. The individual is attracted to persons and things that he likes, and he is repelled by those he does not like. Pleasure and pain are rooted in attraction and repulsion, and attraction and repulsion are rooted in the concept of duality. The conception of duality can only be resolved in the conception of the unity of consciousness. the self in all beings and in all things. There is but one absolute existence. Whatever is perceived by the mind and the senses is only a temporary appearance superimposed on the self. The self in all is thus the only reality. The world is unreal, for it has no absolute reality. The reality of the world is in the self, not in its outer form. Living in the world, we ordinarily are not aware of the self as the only reality. We take the superimposed form to be the reality. This state is described as ignorance. Any relationship that we establish between ourselves and the world, except on the basis of the reality of the self and the unreality of the world, is an act of ignorance. Knowledge comes with the perception of the self. The conception of the unity of consciousness is revolutionary. It revolutionizes the relationship between the individual and the world. While ignorance persists and attraction is rooted in the conception of duality, we mistake the real content of our attraction for the objects of the world. But with the attainment of knowledge, we realize that it is the self, the one real existence in all, that is the source of our attraction to them. As the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, it is not for the sake of the husband that the husband is loved, but for the sake of the self that the husband is loved. When objects are viewed as real in themselves, we identify ourselves with them and are thus attached to them. Attachment, then, is false identification. While attachment springs from ignorance, unattachment springs from knowledge. Ashtavakra uvacha mukti-michhasi chetat vishayana vishvatyaj shamarjan vadayatosh satyam pushi piyush vidvavaj. Ashtavakra replied, "If you aspire after liberation, my child, shun the objects of the senses as poison and seek forgiveness, sincerity, kindness, contentment, and truth as nectar. Attachment to worldly objects is a great bar to spiritual progress, and hence they should be shunned as bitter poison. The giving up of external objects implies also the necessity of controlling the sense organs. To be one in mind and speech, this is an essential virtue of spiritual discipline. The virtue of truth is the sine qua non of spiritual aspiration and the most precious possession of the aspirant. The cultivation of these virtues implies the control and purification of the internal sense, the mind, so that it may reflect more and more of the light of the self. This verse describes the negative and the positive practices of a spiritual aspirant. Giving up attachment to worldly things is the negative practice, and cultivation of the moral virtues is the positive. Na prithvi na jalam na agnir vayur dhyorna bhavana esham sakshin matmanam chidrupam vidyamuktaye. You are neither earth nor water, nor fire, nor air, nor space. In order to attain liberation, know the self as the witness of all these and as consciousness itself. These are the 5 elements which constitute the body, mind, and the universe. The self is eternally distinct from them. It is consciousness itself and is their witness. Liberation lies in knowing the self as such. Yadi dehyam pruthikrutyam chiti vishramyam tishtasi adunaiva sukhi shanto bandhamukto bhavishyasi. If you detach yourself from the body and rest in consciousness, you will at once be happy, peaceful, and free from bondage. Herein lies the essence of Advaita sadhana. By identifying the self with the body, which is the not self, and thus ascribing to the self as limitations of the body, such as birth, death, old age, or disease, we suffer all kinds of misery. The self is really not the body. So, if we can get rid of this identification, we shall at once realize that we are consciousness itself, and thus become happy and free from bondage. At once, the very moment the self is known as distinct from the body, because the self is never really affected by body and mind. They merely hide its glory as clouds hide the sun. Na tvam vipradiko varno nashrami nakshagocharaha asangosi nirakaro vishwasakshi sukhi bhavaha. You do not belong to the Brahman or any other caste or to any ashram. It's not Brahman, it's Brahman. You are not perceived by the senses. Unattached, formless, and witness of all are you. Be happy. Dharma dharmau sukham dukkham manasani na te vibho na kartasi na bhoktasi mukta evasi sarvada. Virtue and vice, pleasure and pain are of the mind, not of you, O all-pervading one. You are neither doer nor enjoyer. Verily you are ever free. Eko drushtasi sarvasya mukta prayosi sarvada ayameva hite bandho drushtaram pashyasitaram. You are the one seer of all and are really ever free. Verily, this alone is your bondage, that you see yourself not as the seer but as something other. Aham karte नित्यहं मान महाकृष्णां हिदंशितः नाह्यं कर्तेति विश्वास अमृतं पीत्वा सुखी भव. Do you have been bitten by the great black serpent of the egoism? I am the doer. Drink the nectar of the faith. I am not the doer, and be happy. Eko vishuddhodhohyamiti nishchayami vihanaha prajvalayam yagna gaham vitashoka sukhi bhavah. Burn down the forest of ignorance with the fire of the conviction, I am the one and pure consciousness, and be free from grief and be happy. Yatra vishwamidam bhati kalpitam rajju sarpavat ananda paramanandah sabodh sattvam sukham chara. You are consciousness, bliss, supreme bliss, in and upon which this universe appears superimposed like a snake on a rope. Live happily. This is an often repeated analogy of Advaita. In the dark of night, a rope is mistaken for a snake. The rope does not really become a snake. It has no other reality than of the rope itself. In the same way, this universe has no real existence. It is the self, pure consciousness and supreme bliss in which this universe, through ignorance, is seen to exist. Consciousness, which is the substratum of the universe, remains eternally pure and unaffected. We are that consciousness. Therefore, we must cease identifying ourselves with a superimposed universe, and thus we shall be happy. Muktamimani muktohi buddho buddhamimanyaphi kivam dantiha satyeyam ya matihi sa gatir bhaveta. He who considers himself free is free indeed, and he who considers himself bound remains bound. As one thinks, so he becomes, is a popular saying in this world, and it is quite true. This is a very significant utterance and one that contains an invaluable lesson for those who wish to attain self-realization. In reality, the self is never free. It never enters into a state of bondage. It is our ignorance that we think ourselves bound, and this thought makes our supposed bondage persist and continue. If, however, we constantly think of ourselves as the eternally free self, we shall realize that we are ever free. Atma sakshi vibhum purna eko muktishvata kriyah asango nispruha shanto Brahmata sansarvaniva. The self is witness, all-pervading, perfect, one, free, consciousness, actionless, unattached, desireless, and quiet. Through illusion, it appears as if it is of the world, that is, subject to the ever-repeating cycle of birth and death. The One is devoid of all differentiation from like or unlike objects and of all attributes. Of the world, bound by the desires of the world, are involved in the cycle of birth and death, unlike what has been described of the self in this verse. Kutastham bodham dvaityam atmanam paribhavaya amasoham braham mukta bhavam bahyam thantaram. Having given up on external and internal self-modifications and the illusion, I am the reflected individual self, meditate on the Atman as immutable consciousness and non-dual. External relates to the identification of the self with the physical and mental conditions, such as this is my body, external, and I am happy or unhappy, which is internal. Reflected relates to the finite consciousness, which is the reflection of the self in the mind, which circumscribes its infinitude. Dehamimana pashena chiram buddhosi putraka bodhoham jnana khadgena tannikrutyam sukhi bhavah. My child, you have long been caught in the noose of body consciousness. Sever it with the sword of the knowledge, I am consciousness, and be happy. Nisango nishkriyosi tva swaprakasho niranjanah ayameva hi te bandhah samadhi manutishtisi. You are unattached, actionless, self-effulgent, and without any blemish. This indeed is your bondage that you practice meditation. What bondage relates to here is that the self is never really ever free. The self is really ever free. Yet, we betake ourselves to meditation and other similar practices. Such attempts presuppose that we think ourselves bound, and so long as we continue to think ourselves bound, we remain bound and freedom is impossible. Ashtavakra wants us to give up this thought altogether, for, as he has said previously, one who considers himself free is free indeed, as surely as one who looks upon himself as bound remains bound. त्वयां व्याप्तमिदं विश्वं त्वयि प्रोत्यं यथार्थः शुद्धबुद्धस्वरूपस्वं मागम क्षुद्रचित्तताम्. You pervade this universe and this universe exists in you. You are really pure consciousness by nature. Do not be small-minded. Small-mindedness is related to unbecoming your true nature, than which nothing is greater. निरोपेक्षो निर्विकारो निर्भरं शीतलाशयः अगाध बुद्धिरक्षुब्धो भवचिन्मात्रवासनः. You are unconditioned, immutable, formless, of cool disposition, of unfathomable intelligence, and unperturbed. Desire consciousness alone. Sakaramānrutam vidhi nirakaram tu nishchalam etat तत्त्वोपदेशेन न पुनर्भवासंभवः. Know that which has form to be unreal and the formless to be permanent. Through this spiritual instruction, you will escape the possibility of rebirth. Escape refers to the round of birth and rebirth is solely due to the identification of the external self with the body, mind, etc., and is destroyed by the knowledge of the true nature of the self. यथैवादर्शमाध्यस्थे रूपेण तः परितस्तु सः तथैवास्मान् शरीरेन्तः परितः परमेश्वरः. Just as a mirror exists within and without the image reflected in it, so the Supreme Self exists inside and outside this body. The idea is this: the image in the mirror has no real existence. It is a mere appearance. Only the mirror exists. Similarly, only the self exists. Body, mind, etc. have no real existence. It is only by the superimposed on the self that they appear to exist. Just as the reflection cannot affect the mirror, so body, mind, etc. cannot affect the self. Ekam sarvagatam vyoma bahir anyartha ghate nityam nirantaram brahma sarvabhutagane tatha. Yatha as evam. Just as the same all-pervading space is inside and outside a jar, so the eternal, all-pervasive Brahman exists in all things.